Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was the Strongest Constantine Exorcist Part 2. Before we start, please go support GautamaFanfic for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Chapter 9. Inside an abandoned church we can see how the church trio is in that place, along with the three demons who joined them in the search. Both groups were waiting for a white-haired girl who was coming out of a room dressed in a priest's robe, while on the other hand a certain blonde man was buttoning up the buttons of the robe he was wearing. Do you want the demons to dress up as priests? Saji asked the church group. Well, I wouldn't like them to do that, Irina answered awkwardly. You know, it wasn't necessary for you to dress like that. I don't know who was the genius who gave that idea, said Issei, entering the scene while looking at Xenovia, who was looking stoically at a wall, avoiding the brown-haired boy's gaze. He just shook his head and stood in front of the demons. I don't mind dressing like this, I'll do anything to get my revenge, Kiba said with a determined face as he fastened the last two buttons of his robe. We won't achieve much with such a large group, Xenovia said, so we're going to divide up the land, Irina finished saying. The demons just nodded and then looked at Issei, who was lighting a cigarette. That made the albino frown slightly, since she didn't like the smell of tobacco. After taking a puff of her cigarette, he said, we will divide into groups of two, some will take the east zone and the other group the west zone. Understood, then we will take the eastern part of the city, Kiba said. Then, we will take the west zone. If you find something, contact us too, said Xenovia with her same tone as always. The blue-haired girl looked sideways at Issei, who was just smoking calmly. Okay, then we begin the search, said Kiba, heading towards the exit. Seeing that the demons had already left, Issei and company also began to head towards their area. Later with Kiba, Saji and Kaneko. The three of them were already in the area they had chosen to search, walking at a slow pace while a hat covered their identities. Everything was quiet until they reached an area where there was an abandoned warehouse. Stopping that. Hyodo-senpai, this is where, said Kaneko with her typical hepatic face, until she was interrupted by Kiba, who replied, that's right, Kaneko-chan, this is where we killed the stray demon. The stray demon? Saji asked. Yes, we killed him on the orders of the Archduke, Kaneko replied. Well, Kiba took a few more steps forward while analyzing the place, followed by the white-haired girl who stood behind him, but both stopped suddenly as their instinct was activated, indicating danger. Hyodo-senpai, said Kaneko while becoming alert. The blonde just nodded while putting on a serious face. Likewise, Saji became alert while asking, why do I have chills? But it was left aside as the albino lowly turned in a direction, indicating with her gaze, over there, she said, finishing her indication of her. The two boys looked where Kaneko indicated, seeing that it was a certain crazy silver-haired man who was standing on the roof staring at them until suddenly he launched himself against Kiba, screaming like a madman. Quickly the blonde Grimoire summoned his demonic sword, stopping the attack of the wayward exorcist, while shouting, how are you? Kiba quickly repelled that clash, making the silver-haired man retreat while he did a backflip, thus returning to the roof where he was previously. It's good to see you again, the silver-haired man shouted, while Kiba raised his defense ready in case another attack occurred. You, said the blonde. Well, Saji just looked at that with shock while saying, like any ending to a mystery solved, the exorcist gone astray. Laughs like a maniac. Oh. What do we have here? A random and a little girl, said Fred while looking at them with amusement. Kaneko frowns upon hearing that they called her little girl. Fred, seeing this, pretends to be slightly scared and then moves like crazy and says wah wah wah, oops, I mean miss, but he quickly changes his look to one of annoyance. Damn, I thought I saw some fresh meat walking, but it was just a bunch of demons doing cosplay, Fred finished saying, and then licked the edge of his sword. Kiba was still on guard while behind him, Kaneko looked at the exorcist with a serious look. Be careful, that sword is. If Kaneko-chan, a sacred sword, Excalibur finished saying Kiba while quickly taking off his priest robe. In the same way the lowly and Saji took off their robes while also preparing for a confrontation. Wait, what is this? 3 against 1? It's not that easy to be popular, said Fred with thanks while hugging the sword. UN''T jumped to conclusions. I'll be your only opponent, the blonde said fiercely as he charged into battle against Fred, who upon seeing that he just smiled maliciously. Well, it doesn't matter how many demons I have to fight with my Excalibur, there's no problem, said the derailed exorcist as he watched the blonde try to give him a horizontal slash with his sword, but the silver-haired man disappears from his place. Kiba, seeing this, gets a little confused, about to crash into Fred's place. The blonde with a maneuver to push himself and fall on a part of the roof. When he was already static, the crazy exorcist appears above him while shouting, I got you, trying to hit a vertical cut. Just a few centimeters away from being cut, Kiba manages to put his sword in front of him, blocking Fred's attack. After struggling for a couple of seconds, the silver-haired man says, this is the heavenly glow sword known to many as Excalibur rapidly, which I call the Crusher sword. From one moment to the next the Exorcist disappears in a blur of speed from the clash of swords, thus impressing Kiba, who quickly also began to use his knight speed to exchange high-speed stabs with the silver-haired man. "But speed, I can't see their attack," said Saji, impressed by what he saw. "This is bad," said Kaneko, and then took out her cell phone. "Oh, don't worry, I'll make sure to kill the spectators too," Fred shouted as he looked at the albino loli talking on the phone. After a minute, Kaneko hangs up her phone so that, like Saji, they can watch the fight, or rather, what they could see, since the only indication that they were fighting were the sparks that their swords gave off when they crossed attacks. "We need Fred to stay still so that Yudo-senpai can use his ability," Kaneko said seriously while trying to keep her eyes on the Exorcist. "Aojo-san, we just have to stop him, right?" Saji said with a smile on his face. Kaneko is confused by that, but nods anyway. After the albino loli's positivity, Saji strikes a pose and then says line as he says those words. The light blonde's left hand begins to glow pink, impressing Kaneko. Saji-san, you did not finish saying his sentence. The Gremory Tower, since in his hand, he appeared a sacred artifact, which had the shape of a dragon head which opens its mouth. "Come on," line shouted Saji, while a kind of blue whip comes out of that open mouth and is directed towards one of Fred's feet, who, upon feeling that, forms an expression of confusion on his face. But that confusion did not last long as he was thrown down while they were pulling him in a specific direction. When he touched a column he clung to it. "This is my sacred gear absorption line," said the light blonde. Kaneko, seeing that the silver-haired man was left in a single Kyusho, yells at Kiba, "Now Yudo-senpai." Fred, seeing what he was trapped in, began to try to cut it with his sword while cursing that unbreakable rope. "What the hell is this, a dragon artifact?" Well, Kiba, upon hearing those words from his companion, just smiled sideways as he said, "Thank you Saji-kun and Kaneko-chan, I have no choice but to take that opportunity." After saying those words, Kiba raised his sword with the edge facing down, ready to activate his ability. "Here I come," said the blonde. "Hey. Damn it, let me go," said the Exorcist desperately as he continued trying to free himself from his bonds without success. Behind Kiba's back a magic circle appeared with a Gremory House insignia ready to carry out his attack. The blonde shouted, "Sword birth." As he said this, sword edges emerged from the ground at his sides, which were directed towards the Exorcist, seeing that Fred kept trying to get rid of the absorption line, but when those edges were closer, the silver-haired man tried to destroy those edges with his sword. "Sword birth, huh?" said a mysterious voice which was heard to come from an old man. "Who's there?" Kiba asked tiredly. From one of the doors of that warehouse, some footsteps began to be heard, which little by little began to be heard louder. "With the right wielder, the sacred gear can become a very powerful weapon," said an old man in a white robe with a cap of the same color, who came out of the door where those steps were heard. "Fred, you are still not used to using the sacred sword, right?" said that old man directed towards the mad Exorcist. "Old Balba," said Fred vaguely, while Kiba, upon hearing that his name changed to one of total hatred. "What?" It was the only thing the blonde could say. "The leader of the sacred sword experiments," said Kaneko with an angry look, and so did Saji. "Balba Galilei," Kiba shouted in a tone of rage, after which old Raquel turned her gaze towards the blonde. "That's right," Balba said while putting on a malicious face. "Even if you say that, old man, this little lizard is me tied up," said Fred with annoyance. "Concentrate the energy that flows through your body on the sword," replied the old man. The silver-haired man, upon hearing that, just obeyed the order of his superior and placing his sword in front of him, it began to shine golden. "Ah, yes," Fred shouted upon seeing his achievement, so he proceeded to raise his sword above his shoulders and then cut the tie on his foot. Saji, the line being tense, fell on his back when Fred cut the rope. "Oh, I can take advantage of my sacred power and turn it on," was the Exorcist's reasoning as he saw the shine of his sword. "Well, how about we dye the color of my sword with your blood?" said Fred as he launched himself against Kiba, who upon seeing that he quickly pulled his sword out of the ground, ready to receive that attack from the silver-haired man. "You die," the Exorcist shouted before he managed to land his attack, which in the end did not arrive as it was stopped by another sword. "Huh?" was the confusion of this one when seeing a blue-haired girl with a green lock of hair who was looking at him seriously. Yahoo! The scream of a girl with pigtails was heard running, drawing everyone's attention. Seeing who it was, she approached the place and took off her white tunic, revealing her tight combat suit. "Shudu Irina-san," Saji said to the girl. "Hello, we received your call," Irina said. Why, said Saji confusedly turning to look at Kaneko, who also stared at him. "That was the plan," said the albino loli simply. "Blasphemers, Balba Galilei and Fred Zelzin, in the name of God, we will punish them now," Constantine Sama Xenovia shouted as she quickly got out of there, thus confusing Fred, but that confusion disappeared when he heard 3 gunshots in a row, which he quickly dodged with difficulty. Everyone turned to see where the shots were coming from. When they saw where it came from, they were surprised to see who caused those shots. Issei was coming out of the forest walking with a golden shotgun in the shape of a cross, which the demons, seeing that, felt a great chill throughout their body. Dibba, seeing everyone's distraction, took advantage of that opportunity to try to kill Fred, who was also distracted by seeing that scene. Sensing that danger, Fred looked in the direction from which that danger came. When he saw who it was, he quickly dodged Kiba's attack, taking advantage of the opportunity to position himself next to old Balba. Dibba frowned when he saw what had gone wrong, but that frown changed to confusion when he saw how Balba had a face of absolute fear. Freddy caught the attention of the wayward exorcist in the same way everyone paid attention to that scene, since it seemed strange to see that your job is to eliminate the spies of the church. But he points to Issei is on another level. It will be better if we do not retire, Balba finished saying, but in his thoughts he said to himself, hell, it will be difficult to take any of the Excalibur from those two. If he is here for now we leave. Okay, I heard your orders loud and clear, said Fred before taking one of the buttons off his shirt and lifting it over him. See you later, bitches, shouted the silver-haired man before slamming that button on the floor so that a light came out of it that blinded everyone. Dibba and Xenovia quickly went to charge against both deserters, but they did not do it in time since in the place where they were both had vanished. Damn it, Kiba said, and then started running in one direction, followed by the blue-haired girl. Come on, Irina, Xenovia said for her partner to follow her. Hey wait girls, said Issei shouting to his companions, but they had already left from there, leaving Kaneko, Saji and the brown-haired boy alone. Issei just proceeded to light a cigarette while a voice was heard in the background, wow, such naughty boys. The two demons turned to look in that direction, surprised to see who that voice was from, while Issei did not pay attention to it since it was not his business. President Butchu, said both demons, revealing the identities of those who appeared there. Where both demos set their sights were so superior that they came with their respective queen. These were Ria's Gremory with her queen Akeno Hinajima, while behind them the circle of the Gremory house disappeared. Could you explain to me what is happening here, Kaneko-chan? Said Ria's with a refined girl's voice. Sona Citri with her queen Tabaki Shinra, while the circle of their respective house disappeared behind them. Explain to me, Saji, said Sona with a serious voice. The two demons tense up upon hearing their respective king, who were still waiting for an answer. The four females had not noticed Issei's presence until that smell of tobacco reached them, causing them to turn to see where the smell was coming from. When they saw who it was, they were surprised to see who was causing them to have varied reactions, but the only thing the four of them said in common was Constantine Saint. Chapter 10. The Citri and Gremory heiresses were in great silence watching as the brown-haired boy stood there smoking carefree. The girls, seeing him better, focused on their servant since Issei began to leave the place. The girls continued without saying anything until Riaz and Sona reacted. Constantine-san, Issei-kun, wait, both girls shouted, stopping the brown-haired boy's steps. What do you want? He asked disinterestedly, while smoking a little. We just want you to explain to us what happened here, said Sona a little nervously as she saw her pawn changing her attitude when she saw Issei. That's right, we want details please, Riaz asked in the same way while looking at her Della tower Della, which looked in the other direction melancholically. Issei just gave a sigh of annoyance as he stopped searching for his two companions and the demon with their auras. Is that what you want me for? Ash, that's what your servants are for. If you have questions, ask your people, not me, Issei replied, annoyed, as he was about to leave, but was stopped again, this time by Sona, who had shouted his name, stopping the brown-haired boy again. Issei-kun, please wait, we want you to explain to us why our servants are with you, said Sona, while her tone of voice denoted curiosity and seriousness. The brown-haired boy just remained silent, staring at Sona and Riaz, alternating his gaze on each one, and without saying anything he approached them, while both heiresses and their queens looked at Issei with a neutral expression. Are we leaving or what? Issei questioned him while putting the holy shotgun into his interdimensional bag. The girls just nodded and then looked at their dear. Kaneko remained in the same position looking into the distance, while Saji just gulped and sweated coldly for the punishment he was going to receive from his king. Saji, let's talk seriously after this. Understood. Said Sona. Kaichu answered Saji with fear as he felt the cold aura of his master. Kaneko, are you going to explain to me what happened? Riaz said while the albino said nothing. All she did was nod at her master's order. Issei was still standing there waiting for him to finish his childishness of her. According to him, a few seconds after the slight exchange of words the Gremory and Citri groups, along with Issei, left from there with a magic circle except Issei, who left in his own Dahi. All of the occult. In that room where it was previously dark, 3 magic circles began to appear, each one coming out respectively. Once there, the previously extinguished candles were lit, welcoming those present. Kaneko and Saji went to sit on the sofas, while both heiresses were standing there staring at their respective servants. Issei also went to sit on an individual sofa, where Akeno quickly approached to offer him something to drink. The brown-haired man asked her if they had whiskey, but the black-haired woman denied having that drink. Seeing that she didn't have liquor, Issei asked Akeno for a coffee, who only nods to go get the order. After that, Issei just watches the actions of the heiresses with their dear. Saji Sona called. Yes, Kaichu, Saji replied with a bit of fear in her voice. While hearing his name, he stood up straight. How dare you do something like that behind your king's back? HMP, you really are a bad boy, said Sona with a cold expression, while Saji only felt a chill down his spine. I am so sorry, Kaichu, said Saji in fear as they knelt down with their foreheads on the floor while trembling. On the other hand, with Rias and Kaneko, the albino had explained to her what had happened in the fight, except for the part where she went to ask those from the church for an alliance. So Hyodo, did he go after the man called Balba? Rias asked Kaneko, who was alone, and answered yes, with Constantine Senpai's companions. Iridide quickly understood what happened, so she just closed her eyes thinking about that blonde. Sai, we can't do anything, Kiba, I don't think he'll show up soon. Kaneko, why did you get into this? Rias asked curiously while the albino just stared at her. I don't watch Hyodo-senpai lose, Kaneko replied as she looked at the floor in embarrassment. Issei continued to watch that scene with an expressionless face, while smoking and drinking some coffee given by Akeno, while she was with her fellow queen watching as her masters reprimanded her companions. Kaneko-chan, do you know that your actions could have affected me in the demonic world? You are aware of that, right? The red-haired girl continued to reprimand. I'm sorry, the albino replied. Rias was going to scold her again, but a loud whip was heard next to her. Seeing what was happening, Rias, Akeno and Kaneko opened their eyes wide as they saw how Sona spanked Saji on his butt. I have to teach you a lesson, Sona shouted as she raised her hand for another spanking, while in her mind she said, sorry Issei-kun, for seeing this side of me. I'm sorry, I beg for mercy, Saji begged while crying in pain. Issei, seeing that for some strange reason memories came to his mind. I remember that he had believed to overcome. When he flashed back, we can see how a child was being whipped by a brown-haired woman. She was whipping him on her back. They were in a room where the child only asked for it to stop. After a couple of minutes, the woman with a lustful look laid the poor child on the bed. He had been a little scared until he saw with fear and horror how that woman lowered her underwear. In the woman's eyes, her hearts were noticed when she saw the size of that bar of meat belonging to the poor chestnut. Phew, not bad, kid, it's bigger than I thought, said the woman with lust. No, please no more, begged the younger brown-haired boy. Shut up now, we'll see how good your weapon is inside, the woman told me as she began to suck the brown-haired man's manhood, and then, she took off her panties and then placed her entrance on the tip of the brown-haired man's manhood. The boy just screamed for him to stop while the woman, without paying attention to him, lowered her hips to embed that rod that made her have an immediate orgasm, while the brown-haired boy just screamed. End of mini flashback. All the high present were trying to get Issei's attention, and it could be seen that he had a lost and melancholic face. Constantine-san shouted a certain Iridide, who brought the brown-haired boy out of his trance, who responded, what's wrong? He said without emotion. We were talking to him for a while, but he didn't answer us, said Sona with intrigue, while next to her was Saji lying on the floor with his butt red, while a little ghost came out of his mouth. Okay, Issei replied. We wanted to ask, how did you allied? Rias asked. First of all, I want to make it clear that I didn't do that to them, they came to me. Second, I warned them that if they allied with us, it would be at their own risk. Issei answered the question with a disinterested tone. Both heiresses, upon hearing that, only attended and then continued scolding their servants, while Issei left from there since he had nothing to do with them. Somewhere else. We can see how Irina was chasing the silver-haired boy through a forest until out of nowhere she was attacked by spears of light, which caused a great explanation. She was sent flying, falling dryly to the ground. Above her a shadow with 5 pairs of wings passed quickly over her. Everything was silent until the voice of the derailed exorcist was heard. Great, I found you, he shouted loudly. Irina quickly jumped up from the floor, raising her guard as she watched Fred appear in front of her. Not bad, you were able to escape, but you've separated yourself from your adorable companion Chan, Fred said mockingly as he smiled maliciously, and his gaze reflected emptiness. The orange-haired girl without hesitation grabbed the lasso she had on her shoulder and then grabbed it like a whip and attacked Fred. He easily dodged the attack and with Excalibur rapidly approached her, hitting her with a phantom attack, which made her lose her balance, almost falling to one side, but in that direction, Fred appeared with his arms raised. Excalibur mimicked Chan, you know I love her too, said Fred as he sharpened his gaze with madness and then began to attack Irina, whose combat suit broke with each blow, slowly revealing her body and her breasts, thus releasing her lasso to she. After a couple of blows and leaving her almost naked, Fred stopped the attacks, then placed himself in front of her and grabbed her by her neck to whip her against a nearby tree. "Let me go, blasphemer," Irina said angrily as she stared at Fred. He did not care what Irina said and got closer to her face. "Now, what should I do with you?" Fred questioned maliciously. "That's enough," a deep voice ordered. Fred, upon hearing that, he turned to look in the direction where the voice was heard, which came from a fallen angel who had his wings spread out just so she faints. "Even if she is small, she can be useful to me," he said, ending by revealing a man who had completely red eyes with long black hair who only laughed maliciously. The next day, we can see how Issei Constantine walked through the forest looking for some sign of his companions. He was searching for a while until he saw a person lying on the ground. When he saw who it was, he opened his eyes in concern, quickly went to check and saw that it was Irina who had fainted. He quickly checked her condition and was relieved to see that she was only fainted and with her clothes completely destroyed, leaving only the part that covers her modesty. Next to him, a very strange bat landed in front of him, exploding in smoke, revealing a brown-haired woman who stared at him or gave him importance and continued looking at her companion like that. He was checking her out for a couple of seconds until a magic circle appeared on the scene, revealing that it was the Gremory group. The three women, seeing what happened, were surprised to see the state of the exorcist and how Issei was taking care of her and treating her like an expert. No one knew what to say until Issei was treating Irina in the area of her breasts and she began to wake up slightly. "Irina, what happened? Are you okay? Didn't they do anything bad to you? Where is Xenovia and the other one?" the brunette asked worriedly. "Ice-kun, it's gratifying that you care about me, even though it's been several years," said Irina. While Issei blushed slightly in embarrassment. "The boys escaped, only I couldn't stop it," said the orange-haired girl in pain. "Don't talk, resist a little," Issei said, frustrated as he continued to treat Irina, greatly surprising those present. Since they thought that the brown-haired boy would not have that side and look at it themselves, they are witnessing how the strongest exorcist, known as a person without expression and always disinterested, demonstrated a side not typical of him. "He is incredibly strong, Ice-kun, be careful please. I want you to keep our promise with Xenovia," said Irina and then fainted, darkening Issei's eyes as he finished treating Irina. Onya was also arriving at the place with Tsubaki and Saji. Riaz was surprised to see her friend Sona. "You came." Seeing the girl faint, Citri quickly went to see her while answering Riaz, "Why wouldn't she come after you called me?" Sona stared at Irina as she analyzed her condition of Ella. For the moment she is fine, from what I see you treated her Constantine-san, but her energy of Ella is not restored," said Sona as she looked at Issei, who only saw the girl with an expressionless face. Citri could only close her gaze while in her heart she felt a slight pang, just like Tsubaki, guiltily looking at everything, hiding her feelings from her. "My house has a healing room," she said, waiting for some response from the brown-haired boy, but he didn't say anything. Instead he just looked at her, and just by seeing her face he understood that there was no problem. "Tsubaki," Sona ordered, "well, her queen just," he agreed and began to carry Irina. "I leave it to you," said Sona. "Understood," answered Tsubaki, while opening a magic circle to leave there, leaving Sona and Saji. "All that's left is for Xenovia and her dear to appear," Issei said as he stood up. All the demons suddenly began to feel chills in their bodies for some strange reason. Issei, feeling the sacred aura, quickly turned his gaze in one direction, more specifically on a tree from which the derailed exorcist was beginning to emerge. Wow, looks like everyone took the bait, even the so-called strongest exorcist." "How are you doing, Exorcist-kun?" Fred said mockingly as he stood in front of them all. Issei, seeing that, he quickly invoked the holy shotgun and then pointed it at Friend's head ready to shoot, while all the demons looked seriously at the silver-haired man. The heiresses, seeing that Issei was pointing his weapon at Fred, quickly placed themselves on Issei's side while invoking magic circles with the logos of their clans in their hands. Fred saw this and was scared and quickly started talking. "Woo, time out, we've come to talk to the red-haired girl and the one who looks like the multiplication table," said Fred, confusing everyone and making him sound a little angry. "Talk?" Riaz asked as her magic circle disappeared along with Sona, while Issei continued to point at Fred. "That's right, my boss wants to talk to you," said the silver-haired man madly while looking up, causing everyone present to look surprised at the being that was flying. Kaneko, seeing him, could only say, "A fallen angel." "That's right, brats," Issei said, changing his target. He began to point the crucifix shotgun in the direction of the fallen angel. "He is Kakabiel, a leader of Grigori." Leaving everyone surprised and impressed, while Kakabiel just laughed with that deep voice that would make anyone tremble. Chapter 11. In that place you could only hear the laughter of a certain fallen angel who was laughing loudly. On the part of the demons there was only silence. Sweat began to run down their foreheads, since in front of them was one of Grigori's leaders. Issei just kept pointing his shotgun at Kakabiel, who after a couple of minutes stopped laughing. "We've never met before, right, daughter of the Gremory?" There's no need for me to introduce myself. The boy there already. Kakabiel had abruptly stopped talking when he saw who the boy who had introduced him was. Issei Constantine. I didn't know you were already part of the demons. Well, although you belong to that place, right? Kakabiel said in a mocking tone. Well, Issei just frowned as if he didn't like that comment. Tch no fallen, the church sent me to kick your ass, exclaimed the exorcist. Cough cough. Riaz coughed falsely, ignoring the fact that some connection between the demons and the strongest exorcist had been mentioned. Good morning, leader of the fallen angels. My name is Riaz Gremory. It's a pleasure to meet you, said the red-haired girl with an elegant voice. What beautiful crimson hair, you look like your brother, Serzich's the Crimson Satan. Just thinking about him makes me sick, said Kakabiel in a relaxed tone. It seemed that his voice was always deep and you couldn't tell the emotions he was transmitting. Well, what exactly could be the reason for this meeting? It is rare for a leader to come and chat, Riaz questioned. I would like to have some fun in the surroundings of Kuo Academy, their headquarters in the city, Kakabiel replied. In our academy? Sona said, impressed. If I do that, Serzich's will have to come help, won't he? Kakabiel said this while having a malicious smile on his face, while Riaz frowned. And what about me, fallen? Did you forget about me? Issei said fiercely, ready to shoot the fallen one. Laughs. Of course not, an exorcist. I have you well analyzed, don't worry, although I expected Michael to come after the Excalibur, but he only sent 2 women with sacred swords, and Constantine himself, said Kakabiel with malice, while Issei sharpened his gaze. So your goal is? Sona asked without finishing the question, to start another war. Riaz finished saying. That's right, the fallen man said fiercely. That's the only reason I can't stand my boredom after the last war between the 3 sides. Neither Azazel nor Shemhaz wanted another war, Kakabiel said the last thing reproachfully. HMP, what an absurd reason, fallen one. How about I blow your head off once and for all, and we'll be done with this, Issei said coldly. Azazel, the highest lord of the fallen angels. Riaz seriously. Wow, Gremory, what a great unnecessary piece of information, thank you, Issei said sarcastically. Riaz frowned slightly upon hearing that while some laughed underneath. Azazel was not only against the war, he began to collect those sacred gear and research them. Damn bastard, Kakabiel said with reproach and anger. The fallen angels, God and demons are teetering on the brink of war. That means a little push from me can send them over the edge, the fallen one said maliciously, while everyone present except Issei was surprised. Wow, you are a war addict, said Riaz with elegance. No piranha, that is not an addiction, it is masochism, said Issei with a bit of mockery, while thinking of something that could be effective in sending Grigory to the fallen. Damn, Constantine. Kakabiel had set out of his composure, but quickly regained it. Cough cough, I'm going to let you 2 start this time, demons. Lucifer's sister Riaz Gremory and Leviathan's sister Sona Sitri, your place of learning, must have too much magical power, capable of causing immense chaos. It's the perfect place to start a warrior, Kakabiel said. He's crazy, this guy is completely crazy, Saji said with stern seriousness. After that Fred started laughing maniacally while sticking out his tongue. Don't you like the way my boss is twisted? That's why I'm so excited about this. Even half of these presents. Fred said this while opening his priest robe to show that inside he had the stolen Excalibur. The Excalibur, said Kaneko. Those are the 3 stolen ones, Sona said, impressed as she felt a chill down her spine. Of course, I can definitely use them all, I'm invincible, Fred said maliciously while at the end he laughed psychotically. Oh, I also have this sword of mimicry, Excalibur mimic, Fred said, while summoning the sword from that ribbon. I got it from the girl with pigtails. We will start a war, sister of the demon king, Serzich's Lucifer. Riaz Gremory, the fallen one, shouted ferociously while in front of him, he invoked a magic circle from which arrows of light came out. Everyone run, Riaz ordered as they summoned magic circles that served as shields, while Issei dodged the attacks by tilting his body and then began to shoot with a holy shotgun. The demons had not seen what had happened in front of them. Issei continued to detonate his polearms until he saw that the 2 enemies had gone in a specific direction, thus beginning to follow them. A few seconds after the smoke caused by the fallen attack dispersed, Saji upset where asks did they go? And Issei-san. Kaneko had climbed a tree, then pointed in a direction and said they went over there, towards Kuo Academy, and Issei-senpai began to follow them in the same way. Everyone was surprised by that when they heard that. So are you going to the academy? Saji asked. No, they also mentioned the surroundings of the school, this is going to be on a large scale, Sona said. The fallen angel of her level could easily wipe out the city. Everyone except Riaz and Akeno to chill ran down her spine. We have to go to the academy quickly, said Riaz while everyone agreed. Akuo Academy. In the courtyard of this a strange symbol that shines golden was forming. In front of this was Balba Galilei, who was smiling maliciously. Behold, finally, said Balba. In the center of the strange symbol a sword was in that place. A ray of light rose to the sky. This had been noticed by Xenovia, who saw that light in the distance. My dream will come true, Balba finished saying, and in the same way, Kiba looked out from a window in the distance, seeing that light with hatred. Issei had arrived at the place seeing that magical symbol, and without saying anything he would begin to shoot at Balba, but he had been protected by magic circles by Kakabiel. Wow, Constantine, I thought it would take longer for them to arrive, said Kakabiel. HMP, do you think I would let a threat like you go free? Issei said fiercely as he pointed his shotgun at the fallen one. Ha, you don't even believe that, Issei Constantine, you're still trying to buy your way to heaven, don't you? Like hell, even though it has new management. You know, since the last time you went there things have changed a lot, it's not like before, you know, said Kakabiel with serenity and mockery, which Issei didn't like. I don't care, I prefer heaven 1,000 times over hell, so get your ass ready because I'm going to send Grigori back to him, said the brown-haired boy fiercely while above them, a dome began to form without them realizing it. Meanwhile elsewhere, the Gremory and Citri had gathered outside Kuo Academy. We have created a protective barrier around the academy, if all goes well, it should contain the damage, Sona said to Riaz, while all of Citri's servants held a magic circle in front of them, indicating that they were all the support of the dome. Thank you, this will really help, Sona. Riaz thanked. However, I can't guarantee what will happen if the summons changes, Sona said. Babaki had arrived at the place with a serious face. How's the girl? Sona asked. If life is not in danger thanks to what is Constantine-san applied healing, Tsubaki replied. Where is Kiba? Saji asked. I don't know, but I know that Kiba-senpai is fine, I'm sure, Kaneko answered confidently. We will do our best to maintain the barrier, but the school building will not be able to remain intact, it is a regrettable loss, commented Sona. I'm not going to let that happen, Riaz replied. Riaz, we still have time, call your brother, I don't know if Constantine can handle the fallen, said Sona in a serious tone. In that case, shouldn't you call your sister? Asked Riaz in a mocking tone. My family doesn't, Sona said in a low tone. I'm sure your brother loves you, Surzich's-sama will surely act, so please. I have already contacted Surzich's-sama, said Akeno. Akeno, I didn't ask you to do that, Riaz said in an angry tone. Riaz, although I understand that you do not want to cause trouble for your brother, our enemy is one of the leaders of the fallen, this enemy is out of your reach, said Akeno seriously, while Riaz frowned slightly, Akeno just smiled and then said let's ask for help from Satan. Riaz just sighed and then nodded in acceptance, which brought a big smile to Akeno's face. I appreciate your approval, but you. Surzich's-sama's reinforcements should arrive in an hour, Akeno said. My goodness, the Redeed said sadly, you're always one step ahead of me, aren't you? Everyone was watching that interaction until a tremor arose and suddenly several shots were heard. This alerted the demons who quickly entered the place without saying anything. Sona, seeing this, could only wish them good luck. As she lost sight of her, she began to concentrate on the barrier. Back with Issei. He was fighting against a Cerberus which had been summoned by Kakabiel while he was sitting on his throne drinking wine, waiting for how his war would begin next. Issei dodged Cerberus's attacks with ease, and his reaction time was high. When he had the opportunity to shoot, he did not waste it. The fallen man, seeing that, just laughed, seeing that chestnut tree, he knew why he had the title of the strongest exorcist well held. Issei continued firing his palm until suddenly he stopped firing the shotgun, and then one of its nozzles started to fire, but with any fire, if not this one was from a dragon. Which managed to seriously damage the Cerberus, surprising Kakabiel, but he quickly relaxed when he saw how the brown-haired boy was sent flying. He quickly recompassed himself to continue firing his weapon, thus managing to finish off one of Cerberus's 3 heads. I quickly take out Liz's sword that an exorcist normally carries and then start attacking the dog. His great agility helped him a lot, to the point that when the Cerberus was careless, Issei once again used the dragon's fire to stun it, a tactic that worked. Taking advantage of that, he quickly climbed on top of the Cerberus and then buried the sword of light in one of the animal's heads, leaving him with only one. Kakabiel sharpened his gaze when he saw Issei, since he didn't think he would last that long. Riaz, Akeno and Kaneko joined the scene. Which arrived at the place quickly, becoming uncertain about what they saw since Issei again began to attack the Cerberus skillfully, thus demonstrating his abilities in the eyes of the demons. Issei still didn't notice those presences, and Kakabiel was also more focused on Issei. The chestnut was already about to kill the Cerberus, one more shot from the crucifix shotgun was enough to finish off that Cerberus which disappeared into particles. Issei slowly took a breath as the 3 girls from the Gremory group appeared in his field of vision. It took them a long time, demon, said Issei with a calm voice. I'm sorry, said Riaz, but did you finish off that Cerberus by yourself? Riaz asked, impressed. Well, I'm the only one here, demon girl. Now the important thing is to stop this bastard, said Issei pointing at the fallen who looked at the demons with grace, totally ignoring how he felt about the brown-haired boy's actions of him. Ah, so they finally arrived, I asked myself, who will come? Surziches or Serafol Kakabiel asked in the air. Instead of my brother and Leviathan Sama we have come, said Riaz, taking a serious stance. Kakabiel watched this with amusement while in one of his hands, he summoned a large spear of light which he launched towards the school gymnasium. Everyone looked at that in shock until Issei spoke. Yes, what great power you have, but let's end this once and for all, Fallen said Issei calmly, making the three girls smile. DCH damn insolent, now you'll see, how about we have a little fun, Issei Constantine Kakabiel said maliciously, while they summoned more Cerberus, more specifically 3 more. Damn, there are more of those things, Grimory, let's work together to finish this, Issei said seriously. You don't need to ask me, they are enemies who are in my territory, my duty is to finish them off, Akeno Kaneko Riaz ordered. Okay, but you, they both said. Quickly the 3 girls began to attack 2 of the 3 Cerberus, while Issei, seeing that, just agreed. Well, this one is my turn, said the brown-haired boy without importance, while I have prepared to attack the Guardian of Helheim. It's game time. Chapter 12. It's game time. That was what Issei said before he began to attack the Cerberus that corresponded to him, beginning to shoot his shotgun at each of the heads, momentarily stunning them. Akeno had changed into her priestess outfit ready to attack the Cerberus. Riaz had out her demon wings to start fighting. The Cerberus spat fire from its 3 mouths to attack the red-haired girl, who with great agility, managed to dodge in the air, Akeno invoking ice magic, thus freezing the fire, breaking into pieces, while Riaz invoked the power of destruction to then throw it at the Cerberus. Kaneko had made a great leap with a somersault to kick the other Cerberus in the head. Akeno quickly summoned lightning that was quickly launched against the Cerberus that the albino Loli was fighting with. It fell to the ground, but quickly, together with the other dog, it got up from the ground furiously. While Issei was on top of the Cerberus, he ran until he reached its head, from where he made a great jump to shoot it inside the snout of the Hellhound, dealing great damage. Hyedo on the ground crouching, turning around to see the situation of the demons, he only put on an annoyed face and then said, TCH, didn't they do any harm to you? Seriously, I'll have to finish this quickly, he said, and then continued attacking his corresponding enemy. Riaz and Akeno continued to dodge the attacks of the 2 Cerberus, while Kaneko gained distance to then again launch herself against a Cerberus and hit it directly, then clinging to it trying to throw it. But the other heads of the beast began to attack Kaneko, and with a great shake from the head in which the Loli was located, she was raised into the air where one of the heads tried to devour the girl, but only managed to tear her clothes a little, revealing one of her breasts and part of her panties. The other head managed to devour her, but the white-haired girl would not let herself. Opening the Cerberus's jaw with her legs and feet and pushing herself with her hands, she did a somersault outside the jaw. In the process she took a tooth from the Cerberus, it fell on one of the beast's heads, and pushing herself on it, she kicked the dog to fall to the ground. While Akeno and Riaz continued to launch magical attacks at their corresponding enemy, which was slowly falling. Outside the barrier. The Citri clan was fulfilling its duty of holding the barrier that surrounded the institute. Everyone was focused on this except one, which was Saji, who was worried about what was happening inside the dome. Will they be okay? Saji asked worriedly. We do T no, we can only trust Riaz, her 2 pieces of Ella, and Constantine-san said Sona would be serious, but when she mentioned the surname of our protagonist, it was in a worried tone. Back to the confrontation. The Cerberus that Issei was facing began to spit fire that was easily dodged by Issei, but in the end, he decided to respond in the same way by pointing his shotgun at the beast's fire attack. From the holy shotgun came a large flame of fire which collided with the Cerberus's attack, which quickly retreated to hit the Hellhound full on. Taking advantage of that opportunity, Issei again took out his sword of light and pushing himself with the animal's feet, he made a great jump, so the head that was damaged by the dragon fire and buried the sword in it, thus damaging 1 head out of 3. The other 2 tried to devour it, but with great style Issei shot against them, hitting them inside their mouths, thus seriously them. But the demons, things were getting more complicated for Kaneko, who followed the same Cerberus that tried to devour her. She continued to hit and kick the beast, but in a moment of distraction, he hit the albino with her claws, sending her flying not far away, just a couple of meters, falling dryly to the ground. She could only watch as the Cerberus approached her, ready to finish off her prey. But from one moment to the next, one of her heads had been cut off by none other than Xenovia, who had jumped to reach that head. Xenovia-san, said the albino as she got up from the ground. The blue-haired girl just looked over her shoulder, giving her a confident smile as she said, I came to help, and then proceeded to cut the Cerberus in half. Issei looked at that scene from the corner of his eye, while the Cerberus were stunned. You sure like to get attention, huh? Xenovia, said Issei in a calm tone, while the blue-haired girl turned to look at him and answered. And you, Issei, why haven't you taken out your sword? Instead of continuing to play with that little toy, Xenovia said in a mocking tone, completely forgetting the respect she had for him. The brown-haired boy just frowned, and in the same way when he invoked the holy shotgun, he said a couple of words in Latin, and then next to him in his right hand appeared a sword that had a sacred aura. The sword was Ascalon, the dragon-killing sword. Issei with a quick movement cut off the other two heads that were missing, thus surprising the demons except Xenovia, since she knew the level of the one she once considered as a brother and something more. As expected, these demons are no match for the power of a holy sword, Akeno said with a smile. I hate to admit it, but I'm glad you came, Ria said, happy to have more help. Issei was walking to get to Xenovia's side of her and ask her, are you okay? The green mechie, hearing that insider to Ella heart to Ella, jumped while a smile formed on her lips. Yes, I'm fine, thanks for asking, answered the blue-haired girl. While the Cerberus continued to attack Rias and Akeno, both exorcists quickly ran against the last Cerberus so that together they could finish it off, cutting it from both sides. It seemed like everything was over, but out of nowhere two more Cerberus appeared, catching everyone off guard and sending both exorcists flying. Rias and Akeno, seeing this, just looked at each other and then raised their auras to the maximum, and invoking their best attack, they launched it against Cerberus, and luckily those attacks did too much damage to him, to the point that only one hit would be enough to finish him off. Hineko, seeing this, took advantage of the opportunity to strike a precise blow to finish off the Cerberus, leaving only one. Everyone began to look for it with their eyes, unable to find it. In that distraction, without anyone noticing, the Cerberus jumped against Kaneko. She did not have time to react, slowly seeing how the Cerberus was about to devour her, but in the blink of an eye, a certain blonde made an appearance. He had invoked his sword bird ability and impaled the Cerberus, which had appeared at Kaneko's side of her, giving her a kind smile. Rias could only smile sideways as she watched her servant enter and save her partner. Kaneko could only look at Kiba with shock while she looked at him with admiration. Rias quickly called Akeno, who understood what her king wanted to do. She again raised her aura along with Rias to invoke her best attacks and finish off the Cerberus. While Issei and Xenovia were lying on the ground, the girl on top of the brown-haired boy was slowly getting up without realizing the position she was in. Already sitting on top of the brown-haired boy's lap, she realized what had happened, causing him to blush slightly as he quickly got up from it. Issei, lying on the ground, had not realized what had happened, and little by little he got up while being helped by Xenovia. Are you okay, Issei? Xenovia asked. If I'm okay, it seems that the demons finished off the other two Cerberus, right? Issei said in a serious tone as he watched the demons gather. That's right, only Kakabiel is missing, answered Xenovia while trying to forget the previous situation. Everything was going well until Kakabiel decided to speak. That was quite a show, she said in an amused voice. Everyone turned to see the fallen man, while Rias turned around and frowned, quickly invoking her power of destruction and launching it against Kakabiel. He only had to raise his hand to catch the power of destruction and divert it to the other side, leaving a huge crater at the impact site, surprising everyone except Issei and Xenovia, who viewed the quote analytically. Laughs not bad, Gremory, nothing less was expected from the sister of the Mao, Lucifer, said the fallen one with malice. Everyone was attentive to Kakabiel's actions until the voice of a certain old man was heard saying it's complete. The strange symbols that Bulba was focused on began to shine brightly, sending shivers down the spines of the demons, who began to break out in a cold sweat. A pillar of light emerged from the center of the symbols, making Issei serious. Finally old Bulba shouted madly. Kakabiel, seeing that, could only smile happily as he turned to look at the Gremory group and both exorcists. Now that the fusion of the sacred swords is complete, I will take the energy that will be released. That was our deal, said Kakabiel, while the sword comes down from the pillar of light until it touches the ground. Did you put a spell on the ground as a switch? I won't allow you to blow up my territory, Ria said fiercely as she prepared to attack. Laughs, leave before it's too late, this city will be swept into rubble in 20 minutes, said old Bulba thankfully as he looked at the demons and the two exorcists. Kiba was getting ready to attack Xenovia in the same way until Kakabiel's voice caught his attention. If I want to stop him, they will have to defeat me. What will you do? Said Kakabiel maliciously while taking out his wings. Ria's Gremory. Do I need to answer? Rias responded fiercely as she prepared her power of destruction to then launch it against the fallen one, who caught the attack with one hand. The next to attack was Akeno, who prepared one of her iconic rays to launch it against the fallen one, who also captured the power to then fuse it into one and launch it against Rias. But should remain static upon seeing that fact, about to be hit by the attack, Akeno had placed herself in front of her to block the attack, which unfortunately she could not receive the attack of Aso falling. Issei was about to shoot Kakabiel until he saw Akeno falling from the sky. He just frowned slightly and then ran to catch her, achieving her goal. The black-haired girl was stunned until she saw that she was in the arms of the brown-haired boy, who only had a serious expression. Constantine Saint. Akeno said in a surprised tone. Issei didn't say anything until she quickly lowered her head and then aimed a Kakabiel and fired a pair of bullets at him, which were dodged by the fallen man. The brown-haired boy, seeing that he just made an angry face and left there, leaving Akeno alone, who continued to look at the brown-haired boy with shock. Thank you, Fi, the only thing Akeno said before Risa went down to check on her friend. Akeno, are you okay? Riaz asked worriedly, while the half-fallen man shook his head to get him out of shock. If I'm fine, sighs, we won't be able to resist until Surzich's-sama arrives, said Akeno. We are in serious trouble, we have to do something, Riaz said in a worried tone as she looked at Issei, who was staring at Kakabiel. Until the image of her knight going to face Balba came to her vision of her Hyodo. She said worriedly. Meanwhile with Kiba and Balba. Balba Galilei, I'm a survivor of the Holy Swords Project, you didn't really kill me, said Kiba in a serious tone, slowly approaching the old priest, who stared at the boy in an expectant manner. I was only able to be reborn to live as a demon, I couldn't die, not without first avenging my companions, said the blonde as he launched himself against the old man. Bakabiel, seeing that, he gave an evil smile as he created a spear of light in one of his hands, which was noticed by Arias. Which warned her knight, who did not give her time to react, receiving Kakabiel's attack which was given against her, hitting her full on her, sending those who were nearby flying, being these Kaneko and Issei, who had been distracted by watching the blonde's little act. Xenovia, seeing that, she was worried about the damage the brown-haired boy could receive, but that concern disappeared when she saw how, with a maneuver of the brown-haired boy, he fell from his feet to the ground. Haneko had not had the same luck as Issei, she had fallen to the ground dryly, luckily she had not suffered much damage, she slowly got up until she saw that scene. Kiba-senpai, Kaneko shouted worriedly, seeing how her partner was lying motionless on the floor. I avoid a direct hit, HMP damn rat, Kakabiel said with a little annoyance until he changed that tone by calling a certain derailed exorcist. Fred, Kakabiel called. Yes boss, the silver-haired man replied with madness in his tone with an expression of the same form. This is the last act, use the power of the 4 holy swords and destroy those demons, and exorcists, was the order given by Kakabiel, while Fred approached the sword ready to take it. Alright, oh glorious Excalibur-chan, you will rest safely in my hands. Now then, who will be first? Fred said madly as he already had the sword in his hands. Issei, seeing that he could only put on a serious expression as he turned to look at Xenovia, who was preparing to attack. Feeling him looking at her, she turned to look at the brown-haired boy, who without saying anything, made a gesture with his head, indicating that he should go finish this. Xenovia understood that signal and putting on a face it would be just a nod while she said quietly. Understood. Chapter 13. The fight was developing in an indescribable way. Xenovia had gone against a derailed exorcist, starting an intense exchange of stabs, but unfortunately the silver-haired man used the Excalibur's ability to take advantage of him, thus complicating the terrain a bit for the blue-haired girl who, despite having these disadvantages, knew how to overcome them. With agile movements, she dodged the derailed exorcist. At some point, he had positioned himself behind the blue-haired girl, about to give her a horizontal stab, but Xenovia narrowly dodged him by standing on 2 hands and then using her hands, maneuvering her body and kicking him in the face, making Fred retreat. Argue bucking bitch, how dare you kick me in the face, that's what I live on, Fred said angrily as he got into an attack position, while the Excalibur began to glow. I'm definitely going to cut you into pieces, from bottom to top, Fred finished saying, while the sword stretched too much. Xenovia, seeing that, raised her defense, prepared for the attack which came quickly, easily dodging it by jumping up. And not just mimic Yau, said Fred while pointing his sword at the sky, from where more spikes began to emerge from the tip directed at Xenovia, which she easily repels. After that attack, he made the sword return to normal, then he put himself in another position and said nightmare. Thus many silver-haired people began to come out which began to surround Xenovia, who upon seeing that she was impressed by it. This is an ability of Excalibur nightmare, Fred shouted with ferocity and madness while trying to attack the blue-haired girl. And how about a little invisibility? Said Fred again while the sword he had in his hands had disappeared. After that the clones of this one began to attack more the green mechie, which blocked the attacks with some difficulty, making her retreat a couple of meters. So combining the skills of Excalibur fused together, In a serious tone, the blue-haired girl raised her defense of Ella as she saw how the derailed exorcist prostrated himself in front of her with the Excalibur sword raised above his head of Ella. Now get ready and die, said Fred with grace and madness. Issei, seeing those summons, only sharpened his gaze when he saw Xenovia. Why don't you use it? I know you can handle it well, Issei said in his thoughts of him as he slowly took off his trench coat and rolled up his sleeves, showing that he had half a symbol tattooed on each arm of him. Back with Xenovia, she was beginning to wonder if she should use her ace up her sleeve, but she had time to think as Fred was about to land a horizontal attack which never came, as the albino tower had gotten in front of the derailed exorcist to quickly land a blow on her face, which made the silver-haired girl retreat. Xenovia, seeing that, relaxed her posture, and then she saw how little by little the Grimoire Knight got up from the ground with difficulty, but when he tried to stand, he couldn't bear the pain and fell to the ground again, but this time crouching, while with his hands he pressed the dirt on the ground, an angry voice stopped him, and he raised his gaze. I heard that a test subject escaped. But who would she have imagined that he had become a demon? I am very grateful for your contributions, thanks to you the experiments were a complete success, said Balba in a calm tone. Success? Kiba asked angrily. The power of each of you was not enough to wield a holy sword by yourself, which led me to a solution, Balba continued speaking, but with each word he said, his tone changed to one of malice. I just had to take from them, exclaimed old Balba with a crazy tone, Kiba upon hearing that his eyes sharpened with fury. So, I found a way to crystallize it, said the old man with his hands towards the sky with an object in his hand. This is a crystal that contains even the last. Kiba opened his eyes in shock as he stared at the crystal that Balba had of their power finished, saying the former priest. Fred started laughing madly, ha ha ha, all the others died because their bodies couldn't handle their power. When I remember that, I feel terribly excited to kill someone, Fred said in a sickly tone while attacking the albino and the blue-haired girl. Which both women successfully dodged. Xenovia had backed away further, staying a good distance away, but she had remained still in her place upon seeing that crystal, recognizing it instantly. That's it, she impressed said. At the moment we were blessed with the power to handle the sacred swords, one of those was introduced into our bodies, Xenovia finished saying, while remembering the moment when Irina was given one of those crystals, was it to give us the power we were missing? Those hypocrites rejected me as a heretic, but they are busy with the results of my research, the old man said, already lost. If it were Michael, he would probably have taken power from the people without killing them, Balba finished saying, then laughed madly at the end. So, there was no need to kill us, why? The blonde asked angrily, after he stood up and looked at Balba in the same way. They were just materials for the experiments, what was I going to do with you if I didn't have you? The old man said sharply, while Kiba began to tremble with anger. We believed, moans in pain, that we were going to serve the Lord and endured unbearable pain, however, you materials have. Kiba said statically while he had an expression that said that at any moment he would die. An echo upon hearing that he could only look sadly at the blonde, in the same way as Issei watched that scene quietly, seeing that in a neutral way. While Kiba was still standing still, Balba threw the crystal he had in his hand at the blonde's feet, who responded with his eyes open. Take it if you want, we have the technology to mass-produce more refined crystals, said old Balba unimportantly. While Kiba bent down to grab that crystal gently as he watched that with sadness, while remembering how each of his friends told him to run. Then he put his palms together while the glass was inside, little by little he brought it closer to his chest. My friends, he said in a low tone as he fell to the floor on his knees. I expected nothing less from a bastard, Issei thought as he slowly approached Kakabiel without him noticing. Alba Galilei, how many lives have you wasted for your experiments and your greed? Kiba said in a serious tone as he stood up and the crystal in his hands began to shine. The three girls from the Grimoire group had approached slightly, watching that scene with shock as blue sky lights began to emerge from the glass. Those are the people? Kaneko asked curiously. Yes, that seems to be the case, Ria said. Probably, it is the results of my strength in the area, and the soul of Hyodo-kun's heart has been released from the crystal, Akeno said, while everyone present saw how silhouettes of children were placed behind and to the sides of the blonde. I always wondered if I deserved to be the only survivor, many of them had bigger dreams than me, many of them wanted to survive more than me, do I deserve to live in peace? Kiba said with regret until he finally found Alphen, as his former friends were behind him, impressing the blonde. One of those figures began to raise his hand to grab the blonde's shirt to get his attention, achieving that goal, making Kiba turn around and surprise one of the children with a smile. The blonde, seeing this, was quick to start to see tears, until suddenly they were his former friend's eyes, they dispersed leaving particles of light beginning to surround the blonde, who was impressed by that scene. Suddenly, on the right side of the boy, a brunette girl with pigtails appeared and said to him, "Don't worry." After saying that, she dispersed, and then on the other side of the blonde boy, another girl with the same hair color, but with straight hair appeared and said to him, "If we all join together. Open your heart to us. All of us. I'm not afraid even if God doesn't exist. Even if God isn't watching. Our hearts will be." He said the ghosts of each of those who were once friends of Kiba, when he heard each word of his friends it touched his soul, he could not resist continuing to cry, and to end the dialogue of his friends he said. 1. At the end, his friends again dispersed into particles of light which one by one entered the blonde. The Grimoire girls looked at their partner with warmth, while they also felt the same warmth emanating from the blonde sight. Previously Issei was heading towards Excalibur, but he had stopped to watch that scene with his same expression as always. SW. I have surpassed his limits, huh? How convenient that he reached balance breaker, thought the brown-haired boy as he watched Kiba's face change to one of determination, being seen in the same way by Excalibur, who saw everything with a slight impression. My companions did not want revenge for them, said the blonde seriously as he began to walk towards Balba. They never did, however I have to eliminate the evil in front of me, I must avoid, said the blonde as he stopped in his tracks. While in front of him appeared the emblem of the Grimoire clan, creating a sword that floated in front of Kiba and then proceeded to grab it. Let someone else follow our path, the blonde finished saying with determination while pointing his sword at old Balba. Fred, called Balba, quickly jumping. The silver-haired man fell in front of Kiba with a crazy smile and raised his defense ready to defend the old man. Balba, seeing himself protected, relaxed his posture, looking at the blonde with a victorious smile. You're a fool, you should have seen me killed after you had the chance, said the old man with superiority. Kiba looked at this seriously until he heard a familiar scream. Senpai, finish off that madman and his sword from him, do T, let your friend's souls go to waste, Kaneko shouted in support of her companion and friend from her. Do it, Yudo, you are part of Ria's Grimoire's family, and Excalibur should be nothing to me, Knight, said Ria's in the same way, giving support to her servant. Yudo-kun, you can do it, Akeno shouted, supporting her partner. Kiba, seeing that, looked at his companions in surprise, not knowing what to say until that moment was interrupted by a certain crazy silver-haired man. Hey, what's wrong, cheesy moment. It makes my skin crawl. Oh my god, I want to cut them all into cubes and have some satisfaction, Fred said, interrupting that moment, causing everyone except Issei and Xenovia to look at him in a bad way. Kiba didn't care about that, instead he began to close his eyes while raising his sword above him. I will become a sword, my comrades are now one with my soul, we will fulfill our dreams of those times, said Kiba with determination, while the sword began to shine coming out of this light and darkness. I will become the sword of the president and my allies. Sword bird, Kiba shouted with ferocity and determination, while his sword began to modify its design. Behold, the sword of betrayal, a blade that is sacred and demonic, finished saying Kiba as he changed the grip of his sword, while the girls looked at that with shock. A sacred and demonic sword? Akeno asked, impressed. Riaz had no words for what she saw. It was surprising that her servant had managed to achieve this feat of mixing the holy and the evil. A sacred demonic sword. That's impossible, two opposing forces joining forces. That would never happen, Balba shouted worriedly while Kiba walked in his direction. At the same time that was happening, Xenovia appeared next to him with a serious look. Knight of Ria's Grimoire, are we still allies? I asked seriously. I hope so, or I do T know what Constantine-kun will say, Kiba responded in the same way. Xenovia, upon hearing that, she turned to look sideways at Issei, who was face to face with Kakabeel. So, let's work together to destroy that Excalibur. Issei-sen won't have any problem with this, Xenovia said. Kiba stops for a second as he looks at Xenovia a little surprised. Are you sure? It is a holy sword, but it is not a sword that is holy, it is an anomalous sword, Xenovia answered confidently. After both of them had stopped their steps, in front of them was Fred, who was swinging from one side to the other. The blue-haired girl had buried her sword in the ground, while with the other one she had freed her, she raised it in the air while starting a chant. Petra, Basilius, Dionysus and Maria, the Holy Mother, listen to my voice, said Xenovia, while next to her some symbols were formed in the air, coming out of it, a blue sword with golden edges, which was chained. In the name of the saint who rests on this blade, I will unleash, the blue-haired girl said, as she slowly brought her hand closer to the hilt of the sword, and when she grabbed it, the chains that the sword had were destroyed. Holy sword, Durandal, Xenovia finished saying as she got into a combat stance ready to attack. Sacred sword, Kiba said, impressed. Durandal Riaz finished saying the same way she is to Kiba. It is a sacred sword that is said to be able to divide anything in this world, reported Akeno. Impossible, my research has not produced anyone who could wield the Durandal, Balba said in panic. Unlike him, Irina, mine is completely natural, just like Issei-san, the blue-haired girl said proudly. Impeccable aptitude. Are you a true holy sword wielder like Constantine? Balba said. That's right, he, like me, is a wielder of the sacred sword. Leaving that aside, this sword pierces everything it touches. I can barely control myself, so I must keep him sealed in another dimension. She would say it would be Xenovia. And here you care about that shit? Fred said madly, starting to attack the blue-haired girl with the mimic ability, several sword tips coming out of it. Which were easily destroyed by Xenovia. Did she break part of the holy sword? The silver-haired man said worriedly. "That's not a complete holy sword, it's no match for Durandal," said Xenovia as she jumped against Fred about to land a horizontal slash. But Fred, seeing that, dodges it with the ability of Excalibur rapidly. "Bitch, I don't want to hear about the stupid power of balance," the silver-haired man shouted angrily while he was in the air, but he waited for the next thing. "Your crappy sword." The derailed exorcist opened his eyes in shock as Kiba stood behind him at his height thanks to a jump he made, beginning an exchange of stabs in the air. "He won't be able to separate our ties," Kiba said fiercely as he continued exchanging stabs with the exorcist, who suddenly went on the defensive as the blonde implemented more force in his attacks. To the point that he finally broke the Excalibur that Fred was carrying, falling to the ground dryly with only part of the sword. "It broke. TCH, are you serious? That piece of trash defeated me?" Fred said with anger and frustration until suddenly a blue glow began to come out of one of his shoulders which began to hurt him. "Did you see that, my comrades? My power surpassed that of that Excalibur," said the blonde, somewhat agitated while he had a smile on his face. The three girls of the Grimoire clan began to celebrate their partner's victory. Xenovia watched that scene with neutrality until gunshots and clashing swords began to be heard. Everyone, upon hearing that, looked in the direction from which those noises were heard until they saw something that left them impressed. Since Issei was facing Kakabiel face to face, he had his Ascalon sword and the holy shotgun in each hand, while Kakabiel had two swords of light in his hands. Xenovia, seeing that, was worried when she saw that fight. She couldn't say a word. "Issei." It was the last thing Xenovia said when she came out of the impression. The only thing she could do was watch for the moment like the demons. The blue-haired girl hid a feeling for Issei deep inside her, something that came out without her doing it voluntarily, a feeling she had since she met him as a child. Now being by his side, that feeling began to come out more frequently and unconsciously. Chapter 14. Moments before. Issei was preparing to face Kakabiel. He had previously taken off his trench coat and rolled up his sleeves. In one of his hands he was the holy shotgun ready to fire. It only took a couple of steps for the brown-haired boy to be in front of Kakabiel, who upon noticing his presence focused on him. "So you're here to face me alone, huh?" the fallen one asked curiously. "With me it is more than enough to deport your ass," Issei responded in an expressionless tone while in his free hand, he summoned Ascalon again. Laughs. "What great guts, Constantine, how about? If we make a deal, join us and I assure you that you will have a life without worries, you will have eternal life, and you will no longer worry about dying and going to hell where you are condemned. And tell me," smiles maliciously, "do you accept my proposal?" Issei Hyodo Constantine offered the fallen, while Issei looked at him with an expressionless face, while his sword rested on one of his shoulders. No one will convince me to change my mind," Paharako now positions himself in combat stance. "Face me if you dare," Issei said with determination. "Ha ha ha, too bad you rejected my offer. Well, this will be fun," said Kakabiel with some superiority as he began to create spears of light to start throwing them against Issei, which were dodged by the chestnut, and he destroyed one or another with his shotgun or his sword. He quickly managed to get closer to Kakabiel, enough to start shooting at the fallen angel's chest. Upon seeing this, the fallen angel used his wings as a shield, but unfortunately they took damage, giving a slight moan of pain. Kakabiel created two swords of light each in his hands to attack Issei, thus beginning an exchange of stabs and shots between Issei and Kakabiel. The fight was surprisingly even, something that impressed the fallen angel, so he decided to go a little more seriously, starting to overwhelm the brown-haired boy, but he, upon noticing that, also began to go to the same level as Kakabiel. It would not dishonor the woman who trained him in his childhood. Of course, also shooting at Kakabiel at unexpected moments helped him a lot, to the point that sometimes he overwhelmed the fallen one. Present. Everyone outside of Issei's fight against Kakabiel watched with their eyes wide open at that fight. They couldn't believe that a simple human could stand up to the leader of Grigori. "I'm not hallucinating, right?" Issei-kun is facing Kakabiel. "Alone?" the blonde swordsman said in shock, showing that out of the corner of his eye, he was looking at how Xenovia, despite seeing a stoic face on her, was hiding concern. It's not for nothing that he's the strongest exorcist, right Xenovia-san?" said the black-haired girl with a ponytail, surprised by what she saw. Xenovia continued to silently watch that fight with her stoic face, while inside her, she prayed that nothing bad would happen to the brunette. "You can do it, Issei," she shouted in her mind. Back with the fight. Issei and Kakabiel clashing their swords, neither of them managed to scratch the other. Sparks flew from the clash of swords, neither of them penetrated their opponent's defense. Until finally one of them was hurt, and unfortunately it was Issei, who was wounded in his left shoulder. The brown-haired boy did not even moan in pain. He resisted as best he could, and with the shotgun in his right hand, he shot Kakabiel in the hand, making him scream in pain. Taking advantage of that, Issei plants a headbutt on the fallen one, stunning him slightly, making him retreat. Excalibur quickly recovered with an annoyed look, quickly taking out his wings to rise into the air and then summoning magic circles behind him and starting to shoot several magic attacks of light directed at the brown-haired boy. Seeing how those attacks were directed towards him, he quickly began to dodge them while running in any direction away from the spectators who were there. Issei was looking for a good position to shoot Excalibur. That opportunity came almost instantly. In a blind spot, Issei detonated his weapon, hitting Excalibur squarely, making him go down to the ground again. Giving an angry shout, "Damn you Constantine, I'm coming here," said Excalibur angrily until he was interrupted by Xenovia, who had tried to cut the fallen man in half, but with her wings, he had stopped the advance of the sword. And summoning a sword of light, she launched a vertical slash at the blue-haired girl, but luckily she had managed to block the attack, but unfortunately she had been sent flying. Recovering in the air, she fell standing next to Issei. Both saw Excalibur, who was slowly recovering, looking angrily at both exorcists plus Issei, who is the one causing him the most problems. He was going to say something, but he couldn't thank the fact that Riaz was on his right side of him with an attack of destruction ready to be launched. While on the opposite side was Kiba about to pierce him with his sword, it seemed that Excalibur was cornered, but like the previous time he had caught Riaz's attack, to then use that same attack against Kiba, who received it fully, sending him flying very hurt. Kaneko was flying above Excalibur ready with a holy beam that she quickly launched against the fallen, but Kaneko was the one who received the attack. Thanks to which she had also launched herself to attack the fallen one, but was easily subdued by the fallen one, who grabbed her by the shoulders to lift her on top of him, receiving the attack herself, making her suffer that damage. After that, the albino was thrown at the feet of Riaz, who looked in shock at her precious servant, but the time of shock was cut short as she began to look at Excalibur angrily. "You, damn you, how dare you hurt my dear Kaneko, you're going to pay for this, damn you," Riaz screamed furiously as she launched herself against the fallen man, who was not in the mood. Riaz attacked with her power of destruction as if there was no tomorrow, as did Akeno, who attacked from the air, but they were easily stopped by the fallen one, who combined the attacks of both women and then was thrown against the black-haired woman, hitting her hard and falling dryly to the ground. Akeno, the red-haired girl, screamed worriedly as she ran towards her friend's body, who was unconscious. "Breathes heavily, damn demons, how dare they bother me while I'm busy," said Excalibur angrily. "Hey Crow, don't forget about us," said Issei while he was on one knee pointing at the fallen one, who just by turning in that direction, received 3 shotgun shots in his chest. "Arg, damn exorcist," said Excalibur while he summoned his 2 swords of light again and charging great energy in them, he launched 3 slashes in X against the 2 exorcists. Xenovia quickly tried to stop those attacks, but little by little she felt like she was retreating. She resisted as much as she could, eliciting a cry of euphoria as she felt her hands losing strength. But she suddenly feels someone standing behind her, sticking his body to hers, coming into her side of Ella as 2 arms appeared with a sword and a shotgun, quickly deducing who it was, this being Constantine. For some strange reason, that feeling of being next to the chestnut tree caused her great strength and determination. She felt that being next to him she could achieve whatever she wanted, like when they were children. Both resisted the attack very well, and it only took seconds for the 2 of them to disperse Excalibur's attacks, who saw this a little irritated. "I'm surprised they can fight like that after losing their leader," said the fallen in a tired tone. What are you talking about, Excalibur? What do you mean by lost your leader?" Xenovia demanded answers from what she had just heard. Losing her leader was impossible to happen. Didn't they tell you?" Excalibur answers. Laughed madly. Well, didn't Michael tell them? Oh, it's true, this was confidential. Well, I'm trying to start a war, or rather I was trying to, since now I want your head, Issei Constantine. Well, I'll tell you, not only the 4 original masks died in the last Great War, God also died. That revelation left Xenovia in shock, as well as Riaz, who was focused on healing her servants with some phoenix tears. Only Kiba was missing, the rest of her servants were still unconscious, but were already cured. "That's not true," Xenovia said in a brittle tone. "God is dead? You can't be serious, I've never heard anything about that," Riaz said as she left her servants lying next to each other in a safe place, while she stood next to Issei, who was serious and without any sign of surprise. This information was kept so that humans would be afraid of God. The 3 sides suffered a lot, so much so that each faction began to depend on the humans to recover and survive, Excalibur said, with a very aggressive tone of voice. Xenovia fell on her legs while her face was full of horror. "You lie, that's not true. Truth is, sees how the brown-haired boy did N''T express any emotion, and you already did, you know," said Xenovia in panic while she received no response from the brown-haired boy. "You weren't supposed to be looking for divine absolution, you know that without God," said the blue-haired girl in a moderately angry tone because she was interrupted by Issei, while the red-haired Grimory was surprised to hear what the brown-haired girl was looking for. The rules don't change even though God isn't there, only the administration changes, he said, surprising Xenovia, who slowly began to get into the fetal position. In the eyes of many, Ice might seem serious and cold at times, but inside he was someone who cared about those he cared about, and seeing Xenovia in that state. He slowly approached his trench coat to pick it up, from which he took out a gold brass knuckle with crosses on the knuckles, still holding his trench coat in his hand. He headed to where Xenovia was. And without saying anything, he covered the green mechie with it, catching the girl by surprise, who looked with shock at the brown-haired boy, who gave her a half smile, and patting him on the back he got up and then placed himself a couple of get in front of the fallen man. Gremory Riaz stared at him. I never thought I'd ask you this, but take care of her. Riaz just nods at the brown-haired boy's request. Oh, here I come, let me kill you, huh? Are you ready for your final function? Said Kakabiel in a mocking tone, already half recovered from the damage received earlier. No, this is not the final performance, the finale is going to be for you. Now shall we start with Act 3? Issei said seriously as he launched himself against the fallen one. He also began to attack the brown-haired boy, thus beginning an exchange of attacks again, but this time Kakabiel fought with a spear and Issei only with his shotgun. Everything was going so fast that the fallen one was starting to get frustrated. Little by little he made more erroneous attacks, which were noticed by Issei, taking advantage of those opportunities, hitting him with his fist with a knuckle guard on, causing the fallen one to slowly get tired of so many hits. But what he didn't know was that Issei was looking for that, just so that by giving him a blow that made him retreat, the brown-haired boy took the opportunity to start shooting at the fallen man, managing to do a lot of damage to him, who severely injured Kakabiel. He fell to the ground dryly while writhing in pain, Issei seeing that he stood in front of him with shotgun in hand, but he left it aside while he began to bring his wrists together and then said. In the light I order you to leave, in the light I order you to leave. While Issei did that, Xenovia and Riaz saw how behind him the air began to distort, revealing how a gate opened. The blue-haired girl, seeing that, opened her eyes wide and shouted at Riaz and said, Gremory, you better get out of here if you don't want to go back to hell. The red-haired girl, hearing that, got excited and without hesitation, left with her deer to take the ones there in a circle outside the dome. Xenovia continued to watch that scene. She saw how Kakabiel was absorbed by that distortion. The fallen one only asked for mercy, while little by little nothing of him could be seen anymore. Issei stopped his wrists while breathing deeply while on one knee. Xenovia approached slowly, looking at the brown-haired boy with a little concern. Are you okay? Or if I'm okay, how are you? Well, I think so. I'm still kind of in shock from that revelation. I'm surprised I can still be conscious. Okay, we have to go, we have to see how Irina is, and we have to take this with us. Issei was heading towards where the destroyed fragments of Excalibur were. He didn't know how he would take them, but there he would see how. Xenovia kept her durandal, while she was still covered with Issei's trench coat. The brown-haired boy also kept his sword Ascalon and the holy shotgun, while he adjusted his sleeves and then collected the remains of the sword. Little by little the dome that covered them was dissolving, revealing the beautiful night in all its splendor. The brown-haired boy had stopped out of nowhere, looking in a specific direction. He could only sharpen his gaze as he summarized his path. The place had already fallen silent. The knight witnessed how white armor approached the body of a fainted Fred to pick him up between his shoulders. In the same way, the armor had stopped, looking in a more specific direction where the brown-haired boy had gone. A few seconds later, under the armor a magic circle appeared that began to cover him from head to toe and then disappeared, leaving the place alone. Chapter 15. In a black car, a young couple was heading towards Tokyo. The boy discreetly looked at the girl while she looked at the landscape through the window. These were Issei and Xenovia. How did I get to this? The brown-haired boy asked himself mentally, while his gaze was fixed on the road. The rain was lashing the road. The blue-haired girl was deep in thought, wondering to herself, what will be my next objective? But how was it possible to get to this? Well, let's go back a couple of hours in the room of a certain demon's house. Are you sure about this? In that room we can see how three individuals were talking to each other. One of them was Irina Shido, who was slightly in shock upon hearing the words coming from her partner. That's right, I want to go with you, Issei-san. The brown-haired boy was seriously meditating on the request that the blue-haired girl had made him, standing there for a few moments while the three of them talked among themselves and about what they would do from now on with the Excaliburs. Xenovia said that she would stay with the brown-haired boy because she was beginning to doubt herself, since when she found out about the death of God, she was beginning to doubt herself, since all her life she lived deceived, believing in a God who had died. At first she planned to go with the demons, but after thinking about it better, she made the decision to go with Issei. While Irina became sad, the reason was obvious. She was going to separate from her battle partner, but without any refusal, she accepted that decision of the green mechie. The farewell was sad for both. Issei and Xenovia left the orange-haired girl at the airport to then say goodbye to her as the call for her flight rang, a hug for Xenovia and likewise a hug for Issei, but with an extra detail being a kiss on the cheek of the brown-haired boy who took him slightly with surprise, something he did not show. The orange-haired girl walked away from there with a firm step in front of both of them, one of whom looked at her with a stoic face and the other with an expressionless face. What they didn't notice was how Irina cried silently but with a smile on her lips since she knew that Xenovia was in good hands. So back to the opening scene. Both young men arrived in Tokyo, where Issei would go to leave the holy shotgun with B-Man. The arrival was short, only a thank you from Issei to the man and a Stalugo to quickly leave there. On the other hand, Xenovia, seeing where the black-haired man was surprised to see so many artifacts about demonology, but her stay had been short since as soon as they arrived they left, this time heading to Issei's apartment. Only a couple of minutes were enough to reach the front of the building where Issei lived. The rain continued to fall, but that did not matter to the brown-haired girl and the blue-haired girl since without hesitation, they got out of Constantine's car to go directly to the building. A few floors later she reached the door of the apartment which was slowly opened. Once it was completely open they both entered the building, where after a couple of instructions from the brown-haired boy, Xenovia settled in the place. Since her things were already there, courtesy of Griselda who had already been notified by the same green mechie. After a while Xenovia fell asleep due to the tiredness she was beginning to feel, while Issei was meditating sitting on a sofa while smoking and drinking whiskey. It was barely 8:36 p.m. early inside of the brown-haired boy who was still smoking and drinking. Somewhere else. We can see how a blonde girl dressed as a nun walked towards an altar inside a Vatican church. This was Asia Argento, a saint because she had healing powers. She had gone to the altar for a specific reason, which was to ask for the health of her twin sister Kaori Argento. Kami-sama, I pray for my sister's health, that she recovers completely from her illness, please I beg you, amen. After praying for a little longer, the blonde finished her goal to Ella. Slowly she left the place towards her room to Ella where she was there. Slowly she undressed calmly to be completely naked, showing that her body despite not being very developed was beautiful. Once she was brought into the world she went into the bathroom where she began to take a long shower. The minutes passed and the drops of water ran down Asia's body. A couple of minutes later, she turned off the shower, cutting off the flow of water. Coming out of the shower, the blonde dried her body with a towel and then covered herself with it, covering her breasts to her lower area. She slowly went to put on a change of clothes that she had left on her bed and finally slept peacefully. While in another place, more specifically in a hospital in Tokyo, a blonde resembling Asia suddenly woke up, quickly got out of bed to head towards the door of the room while an unknown identity stalked her. The blonde quickly climbed the stairs while continuously looking down. After a few seconds of climbing the stairs she reached her objective which was the roof of the building where she was. She fearfully stood on the edge of the roof, looking down where the height was too high, perfect for certain death. Kaori. An unknown voice called in a deep tone. The girl turned around looking with fear at that thing that was chasing her, then turned back down, where with tears in her eyes, she removed a ribbon from her left sleeve which she released, so that the air would carry it away. I turned back one last time saying a word which was silent, followed by that Kaori threw herself off the roof while she settled in the air staying face up. The fall was long. In a couple of minutes Kaori's body fell on a glass roof, breaking it in the process falling into a pool. Kaori's lifeless body lay in the water. The girl's gaze was directed towards the roof where a black mass could be seen there, but it quickly disappeared from the place. While back with Asia she woke up agitatedly in the middle of the night. For some strange reason she was sweating cold, while in her eyes you could see the shock. Out of nowhere she started to cry without knowing the reason. Change of scene. In the middle of the night inside the brown-haired boy's apartment, we can see how the bathroom light suddenly turned on. A brown-haired boy quickly entered heading to the sink where he would start to cough hard. The cough turned into sounds like if he was about to vomit. A few seconds later the brown-haired boy spat out a mouthful of blood, which he saw without any emotion. In an instant he began to wash his hands while washing the sink. For a few seconds he looked at the mirror, noticing one more presence being the Xenovia who looked at Issei with concern. The next morning. In the Tokyo hospital we can see how some X-rays began to appear on a backlit device, and from these we could see some lung analyses which were not very clear. Things that I have overcome, things that many people have not even seen. Raises a cigarette he had in his hands, and now this is going to kill me, the brown-haired boy told me in a neutral tone, while a blue-haired girl looked in panic at the brown-haired boy's studies. You wouldn't be the first to say, said the doctor who was attending the brown-haired boy. Please Liz, you've saved me before, you'll do it again, said Constantine in a slightly hopeful tone. This is aggressive, a few years ago you didn't want to be here, now you don't want to leave, said Dr. Liz in a slightly mocking tone, while Issei began to take his lighter out of one of his pockets to light the cigarette he had in his hand. "What a great idea," sighs Issei. "You must prepare yourself," said the nurse, while Xenovia looked at the brunette with a stoic face, while inside her, she was angry with him for continuing to smoke despite having been diagnosed with lung cancer. "Make the arrangements." "HMP, no need, I know exactly where I'm going to go," Issei replied in a mocking, but at the same time disappointed tone, following that he left from there, followed by a sad and worried Xenovia. For what reason? Well, he couldn't sleep all night because he was thinking about his next goal, which was to be with the chestnut tree, not as his assistant or something like that, no. She had made the decision to be his partner of Ella, since the feelings that she believed were buried deep inside her, since he had left her side of Ella during childhood, were coming back again. Thanks to the actions that occurred against Kakabiel, despite the fact that her world collapsed due to the fact that she found out that God was dead, the brown-haired boy stood out before her like a light. Thanks to some words given by the brown-haired boy during the trip they were making towards Tokyo, those words were enough to open her mind and heart. And if God is dead, the world keeps turning, things stay where they are, it's not the end of the world, even though he's no longer here, we must move forward, honoring him, continuing with the teachings he left us, heaven and hell still exists as do the rules, everything stays the same, keep going, I'll be there to support you. Those words were like a key to her life, she had understood it after sleeping in the same room as him, so she made the decision to be his partner until he achieved his goal. In the meantime, she would only help him and accompany him on his path. Some time later, in the hospital morgue, a panicked blonde arrived at the place with a certain orange-haired girl. Poor Irina could only rest one night. The green-eyed girl looked with tears at a specific body which was covered by a white sheet from head to toe. The blonde did not say anything, her sadness was more than noticeable. Irina saw her from the door looking sadly at the girl. The detective entered the place, who went with Asia, who only cried in silence while slowly uncovering her sister's face and then removing some glass fragments that were on her face. "Are you Kaori Argento's sister?" the detective asked. "Yes, could you tell me how I fell?" said Asia in a sad tone. "Huh? Miss, she didn't fall, she jumped," said the detective. "K? That's circa and apostrophe TB true, she would never commit suicide," said Asia in shock. "Miss, there are cameras that recorded the scene, Miss Kaori," jumped, said the detective. "She would never commit suicide, never," exclaimed the blonde as she left, followed by Irina. While in another place, a young blue-haired man was walking towards an unknown direction, it seemed that he was in a very deep trance. On his back he was carrying a spear with a strange design to the human eye, this was none other than the true Longinus. The boy kept walking no matter what he found in front of him. His only destination was to reach Tokyo where something big was about to begin. Chapter 16. The brown-haired boy and a blue-haired girl were inside the black car, both were in front of a large temple, showing that the night sky was covering them, and with it some clouds, which meant a sign of rain. The silence in the car was deep, the brown-haired boy had a face without any emotion, while Xenovia had a worried face directed at the brown-haired boy. He did not give it much importance, so he began to take out a pack of cigarettes, and being ready to light one, the blue-haired girl took it from her hands. "Hey, what's wrong, Xenovia?" exclaimed the brown-haired boy with a frown. "That's what I should ask you, they diagnosed you with lung cancer, and you still want to keep smoking, if you keep doing that you're going to die," reproached the blue-haired girl with an angry tone, while he seemed a little broken. Issei relaxed his gaze upon seeing that scene, and with a deep sigh he began to say, "Nothing is going to happen to me, not without first fulfilling my objective, you know that I will never die, not without first fulfilling it." After those few words, the brown-haired boy got out of the car to go to the temple doors, followed by Xenovia, who tried to calm down and return to her usual expression. Inside it before moments. We can see how a certain blonde was talking to a local man while her escort was an orange-haired girl. "Father, you have to have a Christian funeral please, we are talking about Kaori," said the blonde with regret. "Asia-sama, even if it is you, the rules still consider it immortal without." "Father please, we are talking about Kaori, she believed that God was the only one who loved her, it was not suicide, she would never do it," said Asia on the verge of tears. "Well, the bishop doesn't think so, forgive me Asia-sama, but we can't do anything," pats her on the back. "Goodbye Asia-sama," said the father and then left from there. Almost at the same time a brown-haired girl and a blue-haired girl entered the place, surprising the orange-haired girl. These were Issei and Xenovia, to whom a young black man approached Issei, who had stopped in her tracks, while Xenovia went towards Irina to greet her and, incidentally, towards Asia, who had been her guard for a while she was in the church. "You offer me your jacket, young Constantine," said the boy in a friendly manner. "No thanks, I'm just passing by," Issei replied while the boy just agreed to look behind him and then nodded to Issei, who understood the indication. The country boy was heading to the indicated place where a blonde-haired woman with bright green eyes wearing glasses was there reading a book. Issei approached silently until the woman suddenly spoke, stopping the brown-haired man steps from her. "I know what you want, my son," said the woman in a calm tone. You still maintain your omniscience and my Gabriel, you flatter me, said Issei sarcastically, while the blonde turned to look at him. Well, I could answer something about the shepherd who guides the most stray sheep of his flock, but it might not sound sincere, answered Gabriel, while inviting the brown-haired boy to sit down, who went to sit in the indicated place. But the girls. They were talking to each other until Xenovia commented on the chestnut's terminal illness, which had left her in shock. It must be said that Asia did not know how to react, since she did not know the aforementioned. How much time does he have left? Irina asked in a sad tone. Maybe a year more, but she's already very advanced, and she still wants to keep smoking, Xenovia said in a melancholic tone, but she almost shouted the last thing in a sad tone. I don't know who you're talking about, but calm down, Xenovia-san, Irina-san, calm down. The nun didn't finish speaking as a heavy noise was heard, drawing the attention of the three girls, who turned their gaze to the place where it came from. Moments before, with Issei and Gabriel. The brown-haired boy was sitting on a single sofa while Gabriel was standing staring at him. I've noticed an unusual traffic of souls. Could you consider giving me an extension? I could help you these days, said Issei as he got up from his seat to be in front of Gabriel, but this time standing. Are you still trying to buy your way to paradise? The archangel asked in a mocking tone while Issei frowned severely. What about the minions I sent back? Only that could guarantee my entry, Issei said in a stoic tone. How many times have I told you that this isn't how it works? Gabriel continued to question. Why? I haven't served you enough. What do you want from me? Issei said in a melancholic tone. Just the usual self-sacrifice, faith too, Gabriel said in a sweet tone. Ash, I have faith, for God's sake, the brown-haired boy responded in an angry tone. No, you know points, and there is a difference, you have seen, said Gabriel. I never asked for this, I was born with this curse, Issei said angrily. A blessing, Issei, one that you have reproached in selfish interest, said Gabriel. I expelled demons from little girls. Who am I doing that for? Issei said reproachfully. Everything you have done in your life you have done for yourself, to earn the right of our favor, said Gabriel in a calm tone. Impossible rules, endless rules, who goes up? Who goes down? And why? Issei said this as he approached a large book which he began to look through, then closed it, grabbed it, and threw it angrily to the floor, then went face to face with Gabriel. You don't even understand us, Archangel. Both adults looked into each other's eyes, one angrily and the other calmly, but the brown-haired boy's expression slowly changed to one of sadness, and then he went to sit on a sofa. Why? To me, Gabriel, is it personal? It's not like that, I didn't go to church enough, I didn't ask for the others, I needed more yen in the tithe, why? Said Issei in a sad tone while Gabriel looked at him with sadness and a little bit of pity. At the end of their dialogue, a brown-haired girl and a green-eyed blonde approached him to crouch down. You're going to die at a young age because you smoke a pack of cigarettes since you were 10 years old, and you're going to hell for the life you chose. You're doomed, said Gabriel, while Issei was paying attention to her, which made him a little angry when he heard it, but he knew deep down that she was right. Within seconds of Gabriel having moved from his position of Ella, he had gotten up from his spot of Ella and then walked away, all in full view of the three girls lying there. Two of them looked at the brown-haired boy with sadness and slight tears in their beautiful eyes, while the blonde, seeing that, said nothing since this was not a subject that concerned her, and she had something more important, since she did not believe that her sister Kaori had not committed suicide, she felt that there was something else behind it. Xenovia, seeing that Issei was leaving, went to follow him. A few seconds later, the blonde and the orange-haired girl left in the same way. As she passed through the door, the blue-haired girl saw a very heavy rain falling. Looking to the side, she saw Issei smoking. While stoically watching the rain, she was quickly going to reproach him, but the brown-haired boy had already consumed his entire cigarette. The girl stood next to Issei waiting for the rain to subside a little. The blonde came out of the temple door with Irina, who, upon seeing Issei, greeted him in the same way he returned the gesture, and out of courtesy, he greeted the blonde who returned the gesture. The place had become silent and the rain didn't seem to stop. The brown-haired boy wanted to smoke another cigarette, but his pack was already empty, and in the distance he saw a gas station which he decided to go to, but not before giving some directions to the blue-haired girl. Xenovia, if you want, get in the car. I'll go with you right now. I'll be right back, said Issei, then covered himself well with his trench coat and went to the gas station quickly, while the rain wet him. Issei Constantine, it's raining, hey, the girl exclaimed while with resignation she went to obey the brown-haired boy, but not before asking her two friends something. And how are you going to leave? Huh? I don't know, Xenovia-san, said Asia a little embarrassed, but luckily for her Irina spoke. I already called our vehicle, it shouldn't take long. The blue-haired girl agreed and quickly went to get into the brown-haired boy's car to see how almost at the same time a black van arrived and a woman came out carrying an umbrella to cover Asia and Irina, who went to the car to get in, but not before saying goodbye with her blue-haired friend's hand and then leaving in the car. leaving Xenovia alone thinking a little about the past while watching the rain fall. Flashback. The little Xenovia watched from afar as her adoptive mother Griselda Hyodo was receiving a brown-haired boy who had a determined and serious look, something that did not matter to the blue-haired girl. What mattered to her now was why a boy came to the door of her house. A few minutes later Griselda approached with a child in her direction to be in front of Xenovia, who was training with a wooden sword outside of her. Xenovia, the woman called. "I want to introduce you to someone," said the blonde, while the blue-haired girl approached her. "What happened, Griselda-Kasama?" asked Xenovia. "As I said, I want to introduce you to someone," puts Issei in front of her. "You can introduce yourself, little one," said the woman in a kind tone, while Issei, upon hearing that indication, only nods to cough lightly. "Hello, my name is Issei Hyodo Constantine," said the brown-haired boy and then fell silent. With a silent indication Griselda asked Xenovia to introduce herself as well. "Hello, my name is Xenovia Korda," said the blue-haired girl in a disinterested tone. "Okay, since they introduced themselves, Xenovia, you could have a friendly duel with Issei-kun," said Griselda, which slightly impressed Issei, but he didn't show it. Instead Xenovia just agreed. The brown-haired boy who was preparing for the encounter agreed in the same way. Already in position, both looked at each other coldly, and with an indication to start from the older blonde, the fight began. It must be said that the result was obvious. Issei had beaten the blue-haired girl thanks to an opening on her part, which the brown-haired boy took advantage of to perform a combo of attacks with a wooden sword. He had to quickly subdue Xenovia. Griselda, seeing this, was already preparing a training session for the brown-haired boy since she had been asked to train him. At the end of the meeting, the blue-haired girl looked up at the sky since she had been knocked down by the brown-haired boy who was waiting for some indication from her now teacher. Out of formality and waiting for some indication, he went to lift Xenovia. The brown-haired boy had offered his hand to the blue-haired girl, while she only stoically looked at Issei. After a couple of seconds, she accepted the gesture and very quickly got up to stare at the brown-haired boy, where the gaze of both was lost in each other. End of flashback. The blue-haired girl, remembering that, new memories came back to her. That time she trained with the brown-haired boy in sword control. The time Irina arrived with that duo to train. How she was instructed with Irina by the brown-haired boy. How the brown-haired boy told his objective in the light of the night sky, where the stars were the only witnesses to see that scene, and how little by little the brown-haired boy was stealing her heart. A big sigh came out of her, only for her to look back at the window where the rain continued to fall hard. Across the street a chestnut tree was coming out of the 24/7 gas station store he had seen earlier. The rain was soaking him as he stopped on a sidewalk. From one of his pockets he took out a bottle of cough syrup, one he had bought at the hospital before leaving. After taking a swig from that bottle, out of nowhere he would start coughing heavily, a cough that would produce a large amount of blood, while a hooded figure headed in his direction. After a couple of seconds Issei stopped coughing and slowly calmed down as the hooded figure stood next to him and then asked, "Hey friend, do you have a light?" The brown-haired man, upon hearing that, took out his lighter from him, one which has a value for him. After that he offered him his lighter, but suddenly it had been kicked by that hooded man, sending him a couple of meters back. Issei quickly turned to see who it was, and upon seeing him he was slightly in shock, but quickly cleared that feeling so that he would get up and a confrontation would begin between the two of them. And let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown in left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.